Lexi Hull's grit, Aaliyah Boston's defensive brilliance, and the Indiana Fever's playoff fight should have been the story. Instead, Stephanie White's resignation after calling referees corrupt turned the semifinal series against the Las Vegas Aces into something else entirely. A referendum on whether the WNBA can be trusted. White didn't mince words. She laid out the free throw discrepancy, pointed to replay reviews that seemed suspiciously one-sided, and demanded an investigation into officiating bias. Her departure wasn't just personal. It was a public declaration that the system was broken.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The implications for players were brutal. Hull, who played through pain to deliver game-changing performances, saw her moment erased by conversations about rigging. Boston, who completely neutralized Aya Wilson, the reigning MVP, found her highlight reel buried under arguments about unfair whistles. And while Wilson was bailed out by calls that masked her poor shooting night, Indiana's defenders couldn't catch a break. For players who worked their entire careers to perform at this stage, the officiating didn't just steal a win, it stole recognition. Fans didn't need convincing. Social media exploded with clips of missed fouls, unfair calls, and commentators questioning what they were watching. The phrase daylight robbery trended for a reason. Analysts pointed out that this wasn't a one-off. The WNBA has a history of questionable officiating, and this semifinal looked like the culmination of years of ignored complaints. White's resignation gave legitimacy to the anger, showing even coaches believed the system wasn't just flawed, it was corrupt. What made it worse was the silence. League officials refused to address the scandal, leaving fans with nothing but suspicion. In an era where transparency is everything, that silence wasn't neutral, it was incriminating. It told fans that maintaining appearances mattered more than restoring credibility. The result was devastating. The Fever's resilience and the Aces' talent were both buried under the weight of mistrust. This was supposed to be a celebration of the WNBA's growth. Record viewership, new stars, and expanding influence had pushed the league into the spotlight. But the playoff controversy flipped the script. Growth means scrutiny, and scrutiny demands integrity. Without it, the league's future momentum could collapse. White's resignation is now a marker in league history. The moment when integrity became the conversation louder than the basketball itself. The Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces matchup should have been remembered for Boston's stifling Wilson, Hull battling through injury, and two franchises colliding in a high-stakes clash. Instead, it's remembered as the series where officiating bias overshadowed everything, and a head coach decided the only way to fight corruption was to walk away. White's resignation is less about the past. It's about whether the league has the courage to prove her wrong going forward. Stephanie White didn't just resign. She detonated a truth bomb at the core of the WNBA and walked away from the wreckage with her head held high. Because what happened between the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces wasn't just a playoff heartbreak. It was a disgrace, a nationally televised collapse of trust in officiating, in leadership, and in the very idea that this league operates on a level playing field. Let's be clear, Stephanie White wasn't fired. She wasn't forced out over performance. She didn't disappear quietly into the offseason. She resigned after publicly accusing the league of corruption. She said the refs rigged the game. She demanded an investigation. And when the league refused to respond, she said, "I'm done." That's not a press release. That's a protest. And now, the WNBA is stuck with the consequences of ignoring one of the most credible voices in its ecosystem. This all started with a playoff series that should have been remembered for heart, hustle, and breakout performances. Aaliyah Boston putting clamps on the league MVP. Lexi Hull diving on the floor with a busted back. A young Fever team showing they belonged on the biggest stage. But instead, it became a masterclass in officiating chaos. Let's talk numbers. The Aces shot 40 free throws. The Fever shot 9. That's not an oversight. That's not aggressive defense. That's a statistical crime scene. The refs let Vegas get away with anything. Wilson gets contact, automatic whistle. Boston gets mugged, play on, and don't even get started on the replay reviews. There were missed fouls, reverse calls that made 0 sense, and total inconsistency from quarter to quarter. Fans saw it. Analysts saw it. Social media saw it in real time, with clips flying around showing the exact moments Indiana got robbed. And while the basketball world lit up with outrage, the league said nothing. No officiating report. No acknowledgement. No transparency. Just radio silence. Stephanie White broke that silence. And when she did, she didn't hold back. She called out the disparity. She said it undermined her players. She said it wasn't just bad officiating, it was a rigged game. That word? Rigged? You don't throw that around lightly. But White meant every syllable. Because this wasn't a missed call in a close game. This was an entire series defined by a pattern. By calls that broke momentum, erased baskets, and gifted opportunities to the aces. And when you add it all up, Vegas didn't just win, they were handed the win. Lexi Hull played through pain. Aaliyah Boston played her heart out, and it didn't matter. Because every time Indiana got close, the game was yanked away by a whistle. That's not basketball. That's manipulation. So what do you do if you're a head coach watching this unfold? If your players are getting penalized for competing and your opponents are protected like crown jewels? You speak up. That's what Stephanie White did. She didn't worry about fines. She didn't try to sugarcoat. She told the truth. The officiating was biased, the system was broken, and the integrity of the league was in question. And then she resigned. Because what's the point of staying if the league won't defend its own fairness? That resignation was a warning shot, a signal flare for everyone watching. And now the question is, will the WNBA actually listen, or will it keep pretending nothing happened? This is a league that's been on the rise. Record viewership, corporate sponsorships, a new generation of stars. But all of that momentum is worthless if fans stop trusting the product. Because what's the value of competition if the results don't feel real? This isn't the first time the WNBA's officiating has come under fire. In fact, this series fits into a much bigger pattern. Past seasons have had their share of questionable calls, inconsistent standards, and weirdly timed technicals. But this time, it was too blatant to ignore. This time, the stakes were too high. And now, it's not just fans demanding answers. It's a coach who gave everything to her team, standing at a podium and asking the questions the league won't. Where's the accountability? Why do the same teams keep getting the benefit of the doubt? Why are there no public explanations? And most importantly, why are the people asking those questions the ones getting pushed out? Lexi Hull gave a career performance and vanished from the spotlight. Stephanie White called for fairness and resigned. Meanwhile, the league's response has been a blank screen. If this is how the WNBA treats whistleblowers, what message does that send to every other player, coach, or exec who sees something wrong? Stay quiet, or say goodbye. That's a dangerous precedent, especially in a league that's trying to grow. Because growth doesn't just mean bigger crowds and better deals. It means accountability. It means transparency. It means proving every single night that wins are earned, not gifted. Right now, the WNBA is at crossroads. It can acknowledge this moment and fix what's broken. Or it can keep covering its ears, letting silence do the talking. But make no mistake, this is a turning point. You cannot have a postseason defined by controversy, lose a respected coach over corruption claims, and just move on like it didn't happen. The integrity of the league is on the line. The credibility of officiating is under fire. And the players, the ones who bleed on that court, are the ones paying the price. Aaliyah Boston didn't come into this league to watch her work get erased by unfair calls. Lexi Hull didn't throw her body on the line so fans could be debating foul counts instead of buzzer beaters. And Stephanie White didn't build this team just to be told that fighting for fairness was a step too far. This isn't drama. This is the core of competition. If the WNBA wants to protect its legacy, this is the moment. It needs to issue a statement. It needs to review the game. It needs to bring transparency to officiating. And most of all, it needs to prove that speaking up doesn't cost you your career. Because the longer they stay silent, the more fans lose faith. And once the trust is gone, it doesn't come back easily. So let us know, Do you think Stephanie White was right to resign? Should the league launch a full investigation? And how should fans respond when the game starts to feel rigged? Drop a comment below. And if you're tired of sugar-coated PR and want the real breakdowns, subscribe for more. Because when coaches walk out and the league won't answer, someone has to keep the receipts. And here's the thing. The WNBA can't afford to let this slide. Not now. Not when it's finally clawing its way into mainstream relevance. Not when Caitlin Clark is packing arenas. When Aya Wilson is becoming a household name. And when young stars like Aaliyah Boston are ready to carry the next decade of women's basketball. This was supposed to be the league's golden era. The beginning of something big. But instead of celebrating that, we're talking about corruption. About rigged games. About a coach stepping down not because of performance, but because she couldn't stomach the rot from the inside. You want to talk about legacy? Let's talk about Stephanie White. She played in this league. She's coached in it. She's invested years into building the game. And when she finally had a young, hungry team turning heads, she was forced to choose between staying silent or standing up. She stood up and paid the price. And what has the league done to address it? Nothing. Not a press conference. Not a post-game pool report. Not even a lazy tweet pretending everything's fine. That silence? It's not neutral. It's complicit. Because when you ignore a scandal this loud, you're not preserving the league's image. You're tarnishing it. You're telling fans, your outrage doesn't matter. You're telling players, your effort isn't protected. And you're telling every coach watching from the sidelines, if you call this out, you're next. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. Let's go back to the game that broke it all open. Fever versus Aces, Game 3. Indiana comes in already down bad, already fighting uphill. But they're playing lights-out defense. Boston is bodying Aya Wilson on the block. Lexi Hull is diving for loose balls with a literal back injury. This team is battling. And the refs? They're calling ghost fouls on Indiana like they're on a payroll. 40. Free. Throws. Vegas to the line 40 times. Indiana? 9. You don't need a stat analyst to tell you that's crooked. You just need eyes. But it didn't stop there. Missed challenges. Obvious hacks ignored. And every time the Fever started building momentum, boom, whistle. A dead possession. A technical. A reset that always seemed to benefit the Aces. The players knew. The fans definitely knew. And when Stephanie White stepped to the mic post-game, she said what we were all thinking. This wasn't just bad officiating. This was rigged. She demanded a league investigation right then and there. And the next day, gone. Not suspended. Not fined. Not investigated. Resigned. And the worst part? No one came to her defense. Not the league. Not other coaches. Not the officiating board. Just a void of accountability. And that void has consequences. Because when a head coach can't even ask for fairness without being pushed out, the message gets real clear. Silence is compliance and survival. So what does that mean for the players? What does that say to someone like Aaliyah Boston, who gave her rookie year everything, only to see the game she loves tainted by inconsistency and politics? What does that mean for Lexi Hull, who put her body on the line in a playoff run, only to have her legacy buried beneath officiating drama? And what does it mean for the fans, new and old, who are tuning in, hoping to fall in love with the sport, only to be met with scandal and gaslighting? This league has built its brand on empowerment, on fairness, on rising together. But when the lights are brightest and the stakes are highest, that brand vanishes into silence. And here's the kicker. It's not too late to fix it. The WNBA still has a shot to get this right. But it starts with doing what they've refused to do so far. Acknowledge the problem. Issue a statement. Launch an investigation. Release the ref report. Admit the free throw discrepancy wasn't normal. Let the fans know that their concerns matter. And if the league is serious about protecting its future, it better protect the people who protect the game. That means backing coaches who speak out. That means holding refs accountable. That means building a system that values integrity over image. Because this league is growing. The spotlight's only going to get hotter. And if the foundation isn't solid, that spotlight is going to burn everything down. There's too much on the line to ignore this moment. You've got record-breaking viewership. College stars making headlines before they even touch a WNBA court. Fans showing up. Sponsors paying attention. This is the momentum women's basketball has fought for, begged for, earned. But it all falls apart if the fans don't trust what they're watching. If every big game becomes a debate about officiating instead of a celebration of talent, that's death by 1,000 whistles. So here's the question. What kind of league does the WNBA want to be? Does it want to be a league where outcomes are decided by skill, grit, and coaching? Or a league where the whistle is louder than the buzzer? Because this scandal isn't going away. This resignation isn't just a headline. It's a crack in the armor, a signal that something is deeply broken. And unless they fix it now, asterisk, not next season, not in some closed-door meeting, asterisk, but now, the damage will keep spreading. To the players, to the coaches, to the fans, and ultimately, to the game itself. Stephanie White didn't just call out corruption. She dared the WNBA to prove her wrong. And the league's response? Total silence. Like the kind of silence you only hear when someone knows they've been caught, but hope it just blows over. Spoiler alert, it's not blowing over. This wasn't a vague, post-game complaint. This was a calculated, fearless, on-the-record statement from a head coach who knew exactly what she was risking. Stephanie White wasn't having a meltdown. She wasn't trying to make excuses. She was watching her players get robbed in real time and said, enough. And the minute she said it out loud, said what everyone watching could already see, she was out. That should terrify everyone involved in the league, because it means accountability is now treated like a threat. The second someone in a position of power asks, hey, maybe we should look into how that game was officiated, they're done. Not protected, not supported, not even respectfully disagreed with. Just erased. That's not leadership. That's damage control. And honestly, it's pathetic. Let's go back to the receipts. In Game 3 of the semifinals, Indiana earned their shot. They weren't supposed to make it this far. They were the scrappy underdogs with a chip on their shoulder and a coach who believed in them. And yet, despite the talent gap, despite the odds, despite the injuries, they fought their way into a position to win. And then the whistle swallowed the game. Vegas to the line 40 times. Indiana? 9. That's not imbalance. That's sabotage. And you can try to spin it however you want. The Aces play a physical brand of basketball. The Fever are young. It's just part of the game. But come on. That kind of disparity doesn't just happen. It's built. It's protected. It's allowed. Let's talk about Aaliyah Boston for a second. Rookie of the Year. Dominant paint presence. A defensive IQ that belies her age. And in this series, she shut down Aya Wilson, the MVP, better than any veteran in the league. And how is that defense rewarded? By being whistled every time she touched her. Meanwhile, Wilson could throw elbows in the lane and get calls like she was made of porcelain. Where's the respect? Where's the consistency? Lexi Hull, who wasn't even supposed to play with her back injury, gave Indiana one of the gutsiest playoff performances in franchise history. She was hustling, rebounding, defending like her life depended on it. But none of that mattered when the game was decided by whistles, not effort. What's the point of coaching elite defense if officiating makes it irrelevant? Stephanie White saw the injustice. She watched the film. She tallied the free throw counts. She asked the league to step up, to just look, not overturn the game, not punish anyone, just investigate. And what did she get? Nothing. No internal review. No statement. No clarification. Just silence, followed by her resignation. And let's be honest, resignation is PR speak for, they wanted me gone but didn't want to make it a headline. If you really think Stephanie White just chose to step away after leading her team to one of their strongest seasons in years, you're not paying attention. She was sacrificed to protect the illusion of control. And this is where it gets even uglier, because the silence from the league, it's not just about protecting refs. It's about controlling the narrative. If they acknowledge one game was suspicious, it opens the door to all the other games fans have questioned over the years. If they admit this coach had a point, then fans might start asking, well, what about last year? What about that other game where the calls didn't make sense? They're not just dodging this controversy. They're scared of the entire conversation. But here's the thing. That conversation is already happening. On social media. in group chats, in articles, in video breakdowns. The receipts are out there, and the league's refusal to engage with them doesn't make them disappear. It just makes them look guilty. You cannot build a serious professional sports league on vibes and silence. You need rules. You need standards. You need to treat every coach, every team, and every player with the same level of fairness and respect. If Vegas is that good, let them prove it without 30 extra trips to the line. If Indiana isn't ready, let them lose on merit, not missed reviews and biased calls. Because the tragedy of this series isn't that the Fever lost. It's that we'll never know what would have happened if the officiating had been fair. That's what this comes down to. We were robbed of real competition. The fans who tuned in. The players who worked their whole lives for this moment. The coach who poured everything into this team. Everyone got shortchanged. And now the league has a choice. They can pretend this was a one-off. Sweep it under the rug. Hope people forget. Or they can admit that this is a systemic issue and finally do something about it. Because guess what? The fans won't forget. The players definitely won't forget. And if this becomes the new normal, where coaches get punished for defending their team, where refs operate without accountability, where games are decided by politics instead of performance, then the WNBA's credibility will collapse under the weight of its own silence. So what now? The league needs to publicly commit to an independent, officiating review process. It needs to protect coaches who speak out. It needs to issue detailed reports after every playoff game. And it needs to stop treating criticism like an attack and start treating it like feedback from people who care. Because this isn't just about a bad call. This is about what kind of league the WNBA wants to be. Transparent, accountable, player first, or controlled, defensive, and too afraid to admit when something's wrong? Stephanie White made her choice. She stood for her team. She stood for fairness. She walked away with integrity. Can the league say the same? And if you've made it this far, ask yourself this. What do you want from this league? Are you okay with manipulated outcomes? With star players getting one rule book and everyone else getting another? Or do you want to see this sport grow, thrive, and finally get the respect it deserves? Let us know in the comments. Was Stephanie White's resignation justified? Should the WNBA admit fault? And how can fans make their voices heard when silence becomes the default response? Subscribe if you're tired of watching the wrong people get punished for doing the right thing. Because if the league won't protect its integrity, someone has to.